It doesn't.
We don't have a mandatory vaccination program. It's free and it's not mandatory.
We're not in favour of mandatory vaccines imposed by the government. Businesses can make their own choices under the law, but we're not about telling them what to do or telling Australians what to do.
But, you know, we live in a country where we're not going to go around demonising those who want to make their own choices. I think that's very important. That's not how our government sees it.
Howdy, Damien. I'm just going to bring, I met these firefighters at the protest. We've got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to bring them in. I met Josh, actually, Josh, and Steve, I haven't met us yet. Welcome to the show, guys. And that video basically sums up the idiocy we're facing. Can you just tell us a bit about yourself, maybe starting with Josh, how long you've been a firefighter and where you were based?
Yeah, good evening, guys, and thanks for having us. It's a wonderful opportunity to be with you guys tonight. So I've been a firefighter for 10 years. I've worked all around Victoria in multiple locations and predominantly spent my time in metropolitan Melbourne, where I'm a leading firefighter. And all through this past couple of years, I've served my community and done so using all of the parameters that were set before us and abided by those rules prior to mandates. Serving the community as we always do and without hesitation doing the job that we love to do. And this is a job of passion. Everyone that's involved in firefighting loves to do it. Not only is it a very rewarding career in that we get to serve our communities in such a way that is personally fulfilling, but you are very much a valued part of the community, and that's an important part for me personally. And we're at a stage now where we're discarded, much like other valued vocations all around the country and the world. We've been set aside due to these mandates.
And yourself, Steve?
Yeah, look, as Josh said, thanks so much for having us. Look, I'm up in New South Wales. I've had a career in firefighting for 20 years with Fire Rescue New South Wales. I'm a senior firefighter. I'm specialised in hazmat, so hazardous materials incidents. It's definitely, as Josh said, it's a job that I love doing. Learn a lot. You recognise that you're doing it because you want to be a part of the community. You do it without discrimination. I mean, watching that video, it really hits home because the things that we try and protect our community from, they don't discriminate. A bushfire doesn't discriminate. A natural disaster doesn't discriminate. And we go in because we want to. We are well trained to do what we do, and it just you use the word lunacy to begin, and it really is to think that we've got all this experience, all this training that they simply just want to discard because we want to protect our right to choose what goes into our own bodies, and indeed we feel everyone really should have that right to choose. But yeah, look, I love being a firefighter, and it's very sad to think that that my services are no longer required as we're coming into the one of the most dangerous times of the year for Australia, the bushfire season.
And do you really think out there there'd be someone who is, pro the narrative, would be standing outside the house with a fire approaching, demanding to see all the firefighters' vaccination passports before they save their house and their lives? Or do you think maybe they'd decide, no, that's all right?
Yeah, look, I think the latter, to be perfectly honest. If you've ever watched a video of how quickly a fire takes hold, it doesn't. You don't have minutes, hours to decide. Things change dramatically in seconds, and look, we just like everyone else want to defend our right to our own bodily autonomy and not have that as a condition of employment. The fact that it is a condition of employment is really disturbing, and we are pro-choice. We're not about saying yay or nay to anyone's ability to make their own decisions. We just want to be able to make our own and continue to do what we love, protect our communities, and obviously provide for our families.
There's this show here was set up as a pro-choice show. We just wanted to defend free speech. We just couldn't understand what was happening to the country that you couldn't speak. But how is the actual departments that you're with facing it? Because surely you guys would be so close knit. I mean, if you're going into fight a fire, you'd really have to be brothers and sisters, wouldn't you? So how is that affecting the whole department with all these people suddenly having to leave?
Josh, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, Michael, the community of firefighting everywhere, and this is highlighted by the fact that the Australian Firefighters Alliance that we've formed, there's hundreds of us, and that common thread between us all is there. And might I add that we've connected with multiple firefighters, medical emergency responders across the US and across the world, including police as well. And I think there's a common bond between emergency service personnel that it is forged in a lot of dangerous situations, and that camaraderie and that brother sisterhood family ethos, I guess, that you're referring to, does galvanise us in those situations where we have great training, but that knowledge that you are going to back each other up in a really dangerous situation is really essential to what we do. And I can feel from a personal standpoint that is being eroded as days go by, and we knew it was coming. And when it finally rolled across us that we were having these mandates put on us, that was starting to be eroded. You could feel it. And some of the stories that I've heard with that common thread being basically pulled apart, there's fraying in that thread everywhere and across the state from firefighters that I've spoken to. And I know that Steve will attest to the same thing in Fire Rescue New South Wales and also Queensland Fire Rescue with some of our other brothers and sisters, that this fabric is being pulled at, and in some instances it's being broken.
So it's affecting morale, yeah?
Yeah.
It's affecting morale.
100%.
If they let it go, if they were to let it go, say at some stage in the future, say in mid-January, they said, okay, it's not working, we'll let it go. What would it be like if you guys actually came back into your brigades then, as far as morale was concerned?
Look, you'd like to think that you'd be welcome back. I can't speak for everyone. I think it'd be pretty accurate to say that across our industry is not going to be that different from probably the rest of the Australian working industries, in that there is, I acknowledge there's a percentage of people who, have chosen to be vaccinated for health related reasons, and they feel that's the right thing to do. But I talk to the vast number of my colleagues who, at the end of the day, they feel like they were forced to do it. They had no other choice. They were, when you mandate someone, you don't give them a choice. They can't make an informed decision. And I've got colleagues who say, "Oh, look, I don't think this is right, but what other choice do we have?" And that's really sad when you put in that position where your choices and your freedoms are taken away. And I think, I would like to think that deep down there are a lot of Australians, a lot of firefighters in Victoria, Queensland, across the states, who still believe in freedom of choice, even though they've made their choice. They still believe in that, and so that we would effectively still have a place in our organisations, because it's got to be hard. Like, everything's going to be difficult. The overtime bill's going to go up. We're not there. We're not there doing our job. And to say it's pretty hard to watch, emergency services ministers on the news going, "Oh, look, we it's like a slap in the face when they say, 'Oh, we'll cope with when 10% of our workforce isn't there.'" It's like, well, what were we to you? What were we to you when we were there?
Is that the percentage, Steve? Is that the percentage do you think that's the percentage that is, how many have left as a result of these mandates? What's the percentage of the brigade that's said, no, they won't go along with the mandates?
Look, I think it's probably a bit less than that. It's hard to say. We were never given the exact figures. New South Wales fireys are made up of full-time permanent firefighters, and then what we call retained firefighters, which are across all of rural New South Wales. So there's a lot of those firefighters. So look, I'd say it's probably lower than 10%, because I think some people, they've held out as long as they could. They wanted to be able to choose, but when you're put in a position where
you've got a sniper operation. There's a sniper operation in the background going on there.
Yes.
Just watch them, man. Just watch them.
Yeah, got two, and this is probably why I do what I do.
Hey, we're all fathers, mate. No, got no worries at all. Let them go.
We've got two beautiful girls in the background, and you do everything you do for your children. And
so how do you balance that, Steve? How do you balance that? Because I'm talking to a lot of fathers, like Michael's saying too. We're all fathers here. I don't know about Josh, but I certainly am, and Michael is, and Josh too, yeah. So how do you balance the need to work and provide for those children, and teaching them about the stance you're taking because you don't refuse to be bullied by government mandate that you don't trust? And what pressures is there from partners, etc., as well?
Oh, sorry.
Look, maybe I'll start, and then I'm sure Josh has got some thoughts on this. Look, I'll be real. I'm really thankful. I've got a very supportive wife. I know that this has been. Just gonna. Can you close the door, Annabelle? Thank you. I know that. Look, I know that. Sadly, this is something that's divided families, and that really breaks my heart. That I know of people, firefighters who their marriages and their family relationships are really strained because they have differing views on this, and you can understand. I think the biggest thing for me, and it has been a challenge, is recognizing where my identity is, because we do a job for 20 years that we love, and then all of a sudden when you're told you can't turn up to work anymore, you're told you can't even enter the premises of your organization anywhere, it really affects you. I'm not going to say it didn't affect me. It has affected me, and but the challenge is to recognize, I've got value, and whilst I might not be working as a firefighter, I'm still a firefighter. I'm still a dad. I'm still a husband, and I think I really need to hold on to that, because that's ultimately what I want my children to be proud of. Obviously, they love the fact that Dad was a fiery and they could come to the station and jump on the truck and squirt the hose and do all that sort of stuff. And it's probably hard to explain to kids when they're that young. It is definitely a challenge. But I think when
you're saying your family are presenting a united front, which is fantastic, but it still puts a pressure on, doesn't it? Irrespective of whether you're presenting a united front or not, because the bills are still coming in.
That's
so
right.
You have to continue to find money. So how far do you have to go into your savings? Are they going to starve you into submission eventually? Because we've been talking about that a lot today. We've been starved into submission.
Basically, people like yourselves who've made your choice based on your own integrity, we're under siege now by our own country, by our own government, basically trying to starve us out into submission. It's extraordinary. You can't even believe we're having a conversation. I can't even believe we're looking at images like that video we just saw, where we're looking at images from the fires that are still all in our memory. There's a lot of towns that still haven't, been repaired, and we're getting rid of fireys with the integrity of I just can't get my head around it.
It still brings pressure into the family.
You guys must be standing. It's actually chilling to watch that video, because we've gone through the COVID, but we forget that the whole world was basically watching Australia during that firestorm.
Yeah.
Sorry. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that pressure that it still comes to bear in the family?
So an interesting thing that happened to me this morning, my 5.5-year-old son asked me, when are you going to go back to the station again? And he knows he can see this, and I don't normally have a beard going, because obviously our breathing apparatus needs to have a seal right around the face to ensure
that it works properly. There's a bit of that
properly.
going around at the moment. Quite a few of us have got beards. Yeah.
And when
what
when
happened
I was
with your son, Josh?
So he's very aware that there's something going on in terms of health at the moment. We can't take, for instance, the kids' swimming lessons had to be cancelled for us anyway, because we weren't allowed to attend, not being vaccinated. They were wondering about the swimming. When's the swimming happening again? My daughter's 4 years old. So especially my son, he's quite aware. So when I explained to him that to go to work, I would have to hand over a part of my sovereignty, and I've been teaching him about a few things that you probably wouldn't. I think in any other circumstance, I wouldn't be talking to my son about these sorts of things, but I'm trying to instill in him a few early, seeds of awareness, just so that when he goes through his adolescence, that he can speak of these things with some sort of memory and knowledge, perhaps. And a quote that I love to recite is lead from the front by example, not from the rear as directed. And I think, if we go down the road 10, 15, 20 years and dad gets asked, that stuff that happened in 2020 and 2022 or 2021, 2022, what did you do? And I'll be able to place hand on heart and say that I wanted to live on my feet, not die on my knees, kind of thing, or die on my feet.
Well, let's
not
hope it's not 2021 to 2029. That would make it a real problem. And what does it feel like, Josh, to have that conversation with your son? When you're having that conversation with your son, how does it feel? What's the feeling there? And how does your son respond to that conversation?
He does have a lot of questions and an inquisitive mind, being sort of going on 6 years old. But I can actually have a few. I don't feel as though I need to dumb it down for him. He understands that coronavirus is here, and that it's having to be dealt with in some way, shape, or form. And I guess what it means for us is that I just need to tell him that there's consequences to what I'm choosing to do, but I'm also doing it for not only the greater good or their future, but as I said in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago when I was on stage, I was doing it for every other child in that crowd and all the parents that had children in that crowd, that collectively we need to stand together, because if we're divided, this whole thing just washes over us, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's right. With the Firefighters Alliance, can you tell us something about that and what you're trying to achieve through it?
Yeah,
because I see there's a donate button here.
Go for it, Steve.
Look, I think what everyone's probably experienced right at the beginning of all of this was the feeling of isolation, the feeling of, am I the crazy one to be questioning what's going on in the country? And are there people that, maybe share my thoughts, share my views? And I think as people have started to unite and get ourselves back together, recognize the value of solidarity for one, and recognize the value of coming together in a cause. And so, look, we definitely are very opposed to the idea of mandatory vaccination, and that's because you threaten my job, you're threatening my family, and the government is, whether they want to admit it or not, they've instigated this. Mm-hmm. And when you ask employers, ironically, the employers are the ones who say they're the ones told that it's their job to enforce the mandate. But when you ask them, they say, "Oh, we're just doing what the government needs us to do." So everyone's passing the buck here. But I think we recognised that we were all joined together in something that was a lot bigger than ourselves, to be honest, guys. And by creating an Australian Firefighters Alliance rather than just a New South Wales pro-choice group or a Victorian, I guess we felt a sense of being unified across the nation. And it is a national problem. It's affecting everyone across the country. And
are you going to court with it though? I see you're working with lawyers. So is there a court case heading to the Supreme Court?
Look, there isn't anything at this stage. We're not ruling anything out. We all know that the cost of things the cost of legal action is incredibly high. I mean, there are a variety of remedies. You hope that common sense would prevail, really, in some regard. Just something that you mentioned earlier, Josh was talking about. You asked about, is how the perception, even amongst our organisation. I think there's a real irony here. What seems to drive everything and everyone is 3 words: fear, panic, and alarmism. Fear, panic, and alarmism is it's almost their blanket. It seems to drive everything And ironically, they're three luxuries that we can't afford in our job. We can't be driven by fear with the decisions we make, certainly not alarmism. And if we panic in a fire situation, we can get ourselves killed. So the very things that seem to be driving the decision makers in this nation are the very opposite of how we operate as firefighters. And I think it's sad that our organisations seem to have thrown away those valuable ideals of, just exercising some caution. Look at the data. This is not as obvious as people make out. We've got situations in New South Wales now where stations are being closed because vaccinated firefighters have tested positive and brought COVID into the station. So the station effectively has to be closed down while it's clean. There's no fire protection going on during that time. Yet, and the public's not even aware of some of these things. And you get situations where we've got situations where firefighters across the country who believe they were doing the right thing or choosing to get vaccinated, and some of them are sustaining vaccine injuries as a result. And
do you think is there a kickback with the? I don't know if you're still talking with the community, but how about the booster? Because there's a lot of people who are saying no to the booster, and if you take it 3 months later, you got to take another one. That's what they're talking about now. So are they going to remove another 10% or more when that comes?
We can certainly see that happening, Michael. Yeah,
that's extraordinary. And so we're heading into what could possibly be an equivalent fire season, because there's been no burn off for the last 2 years with COVID, I'd say. And so we're heading off into a powder keg, and we've got less fireys than usual. And somehow that makes sense.
I think the booster is a real issue. And I think a lot of people actually thought, double dose, that was it. And that's what they thought they were signing up for too. And I know colleagues who I feel quite hesitant about that. And one of those reasons might be because they did have an adverse reaction to one or both doses of the vaccine. And once again, that's not to say that someone can't make the choice to be vaccinated. It says there are people who are experiencing adverse reactions. And if I've got a choice between maintaining my own health as it is, because firefighters, we've all got to be pretty fit and healthy to do our job. I did a few stats. I mean, my likelihood of experiencing some sort of COVID event was around about 0.002%.
Yeah.
And so I prefer those odds over putting myself at risk. And once again, not given the choice.
And you got zero. If you don't take the vaccine, you got zero chance of an adverse reaction.
Well, that's exactly
like those
right.
odds.
That's yeah. Can I just ask, how about your union? Because you've always generally had a strong union. What's the union stance been on it? Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. If I say nothing, will that give you an idea?
Yeah, I think Josh did it with his grin. Yeah, that's extraordinary. I can't understand why there's even no discussion about it. No,
Well, that's a very common story across all industries across the nation. And recently we were speaking with some firefighters in Florida who are very well respected and have chosen not to. One's actually retired, but another had recently was terminated, so he was fired from his battalion chief position in Palm Beach. And they were speaking. They've got a large project over there, basically doing what we're doing, and they were speaking to the some of the guys from the New York Fire Department union, and they've had multiple station closures in New York City due to thousands of firefighters not choosing to to be vaccinated, and even their union it's the strongest in the nation as far as a firefighters union is concerned, and they were unable to reverse the mandates on their own. And one of the union leaders actually told these guys from Florida that, good luck with your fight, because, I mean, if we couldn't do it, then there's probably zero chance that you'll be successful. And the biggest mistake that he admitted to was the fact that when all the teachers and all the nurses were screaming for help, their union did nothing. And then when it came for them, they were eventually subsumed by it and didn't have the strength. Even though they're the biggest in the nation, they didn't have the strength to overcome it.
So, and I think the union movement in Australia is traditionally maybe stronger than the union movement in America. I could be wrong there, but that's my perception. And you're talking about, Steve was talking about hoping that common sense would prevail, but we're clearly not seeing any sign of that across like many industries, not just precluded to the firefighters industry. So what happens? They use the legal process as a protracted and long and expensive process, and they will use that. The government will use that to their advantage. They know that full well. They will drag it out and out and out and out until you can no longer fight. So what do you envisage happening in that circumstance? At what point do you put your house back on the market, presuming you own your homes, you downsize? Do you take your family to live in a caravan park and sit it out and wait it out? What do you envisage happening?
I think for firefighters across, the organisations, obviously, so Josh and I have been in there a few years. I've done 20 years, and there's fireys who feel the same way as I do, have been in there longer. Some up around 35 years, and it's, look, for some of us who've done some service, we've got some long service leave, so maybe we've got a little bit of breathing space to try and make some choices and make some decisions about work. Like our organisation's actually given us another deadline date. I call it the come to your senses deadline, where they think, well, surely you'll come to your senses and realise this is the only way forward to respond to the mandate. So, we've got time, but we're stood down on our own holiday pay. So, I mean, it's good to have that buffer. But for the firefighter who literally only started their job, the job that they've been wanting to do their whole life 2 years ago, or a year ago, they don't have any of that. They don't have accrued long service leave or massive amount of holiday pay, and they're being severely discriminated against because of their choice. So I really feel, I feel for those people, those men and women in our organisation, and that's going to be the same across other industries. But yeah, look, we do have some choices to make, that's for sure.
Can I just like Josh says too? Could I say, Josh? No, I just want to. Josh, you were talking about so on one hand you sacrifice your children because they can't swim, so you claw a bit of money back that way. Because I know how it works as a father. You've got to think, okay, but at the same time, then your children miss out on swimming lessons, so they can't swim. I mean, these are just extraordinary sacrifices to have to make, and they really threaten your role as a man in this culture who wants to provide and be able to protect his children. That right has been taken away from you.
I tell you what, though, Damon, the alternative is much worse. Like if I was incapacitated or passed away from an adverse reaction, like the thousands that we've seen, and we're not hearing about through the normal avenues. Like that's my sister and I are very much aligned on this, and the alternative is just not an option.
And so have you told your son that? Have you been as specific as that to your son?
Yeah, but not in those words, but that ultimatum type nature of it, I haven't relayed to him, but I've certainly addressed it in terms of, well, if I want to go to work in the normal capacity that I used to go to work, there is a sacrifice to be made, and I'm not prepared to make that sacrifice.
Is there a blessing in those conversations, in this dark cloud? Is that a silver lining? Suddenly you're having these really serious, honest conversations with your son that you mightn't have had previously?
Well, 100%. I think there's many aspects to it. Not only am I teaching him some valuable lessons, and my daughter's probably a little bit too young to realise, but it's galvanized my desires and my I guess a mission for myself at the moment is to go out every day and possibly engage with someone who can spread that message, that we need to stand up, and it's basically the mass non-compliance that's going to get us through in all of this. So if we can pass that message on to 1, 3, 10 people who then do the same to another 3, 10 people, maybe we'll have a win down the road.
Can I ask, just so the people out there can hear now, we're talking about fighting fires, but you guys do a lot more. Can you tell us some of the other duties that you do? What like a normal week? What would happen in a normal week?
Oh, maybe I'll go first. So, like when we're on shift, in New South Wales, we do 24-hour shifts. We're one of the few states that went to that. So we do 2 24-hour shifts in an 8-day cycle, and you're there. You've got all your station work to do. You've got drill work to do. You've checking the inventory of your truck. You're making sure that everything is where it should be, so that when you can turn out, you can do your job. You don't want to be looking for something that you need that's going to be potentially there to save someone's life. I am a hazmat person, so my role extends to hazardous materials incidents. And ironically, and this was something I took up with my employer, they have taught me to analyze risk. They've taught me to analyze risk to the nth degree, with chemicals, with gases, with anything that potentially could cause me harm, and to err on the utmost caution at every stage. And I just can't fathom why, when I want to do the same thing in this situation, all of a sudden I just have to throw all that training out the window and just roll the dice.
And that's our taxpayers' money is paid for that training, correct? So basically, we've invested in you as a hugely valuable member of our community to deal with these situations that we don't want to deal with. But you say it extends to that. So even though it extends to that, you're still doing things like car accidents.
Yeah.
Life. This is what I mean. Source of life. What other sort of things would you be called out for?
Well, car accidents are concerns for welfare, assisting the ambulance, assisting the police with drug laboratories that they're investigating, spills on the freeway, assisting the ambulance. Then you've got, your combined response with the bushfire brigade in summer, where you're trying to protect, property, anything. And then, of course, there's community engagement, trying to make sure that the community know what fire safety is all about. So actively doing visits to schools, preschools, nursing homes. We do a lot. We're not just there putting out fires, but we're part of the community. We've always been part of the community, and that's probably why we do it.
That's why we're growing up as kids, firemen. It's firemen, police, doctors. Things they're way up there on the upper echelon. Can I ask, has the government at all, or the minister at all, rationalised how our community is safer by having 10% of our firefighters removed because they have the integrity to do my body, my choice, and that's safer for the community to have 10% of the firefighters removed than have them out there with possibility that they might catch COVID. Because I don't understand the risk evaluation that the government has made. Have they actually come out and publicly stated?
I don't think it's something in Victoria that's been addressed, Michael, and across all industries. It's not. I mean, I heard the other day that there was 30 odd Ambulance Victoria paramedics that were not on the road or didn't have a job anymore. They're actually going to the Fair Work Commission early in the new year to address their issues. But not long after I found that news out that they had in fact been terminated, that it was on one of the major newspapers in Melbourne that there were crises involving priority zero calls, which is basically people in absolute peril, minutes to live, and there's an ambulance not coming to them either because not sufficient ambulance appliances getting to them, or even the ESTA, the Emergency Services Telecommunications Authority, basically not being able to supply the priority zero call takers to actually get that call to the dispatcher to get them out.
Yeah, I've been going around the protests, interviewing people to why they're there, and I came along a bunch of the call operators. And I think there's two call operators. There's the one that take the first call and then they pass them through.
Yes.
And the ones that they pass them through to, they're the really the ones that have had all the training. And they're
triaging the patients. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
To basically get that ambulance out there. Yeah.
Yeah, highly valuable. And they're at the march. They've lost their jobs. And the paramedics I talked to and the nurses were sacked over gross dereliction of duty or something like that, after they'd been fought through the pandemic from the start, without anything really, just the hazmats or whatever you call that stuff. And there's and that's what they're just discarded. Like
the stupidity of it is that they were doing the valued work and fronting up to work to do their duty for the community and save other people's lives without the knowledge of. We've got that like dynamic risk assessment thing going on where we need to, and I'll take this from my colleague who spoke on stage a couple of weeks ago. Plan, do, check, adjust. Like we planned for it, we put the things in place. We need to basically apply that dynamic risk assessment as we go along and check and then adjust our actions to suit what's going on at the time. So if like they were doing that work early on when that knowledge, that intel wasn't there about what we were dealing with. And now we're down the road and we've got individuals who are working still on the front line, but they're vaccinated. But we're hearing every day about stations in our workforce that are being exposed to COVID, and whole shifts and multiple, like all the shifts across the stations. We usually have 4 or 5 platoons across a station. They basically all have to be isolated if there's been a contact within the station until those tests come back negative. And don't get me started on what tests they're using, because it's not even giving us the right diagnostics. But this notion that we now have the intervention to basically curb this, and it's not working, but yet you've got all these trained professionals sitting on the sidelines, ready to work, not sick, and we're just still shunned. We're stonewalled every day with every correspondence that we send out to our superiors.
Can I ask, if you're in a station, say you're in Box Hill, you got Box Hill Fire Station. I remember talking, they used to come around to even school and teach when you were young, and they'd send a fire truck from Box Hill. They'd send one, say, from Baldwin or wherever the next one is. So how, if you're suddenly missing one entire station for 2 days, how dangerous is that for the community? If it's shut down because it's been isolated.
Look, across into Sydney, it's not going to be any different from Box Hill. It's really dangerous. We have something called tolling, where you toll a station, and that you might not be able to completely man a station, so you'll shut a station for a time until you can get guys in on overtime, or until you can fill the gap, and then you'll shove those fireys to fill holes somewhere else. But stations are placed in regions, for a reason.
Yeah, that's great.
And your response times are just naturally going to go up, and at some point, someone could lose a life. You can't rule that out. You can't rule out.
It could even be worse.
It could
Seriously,
be worse.
I mean, it could be something like a major fire, and we simply don't have the manpower that we used to have to tackle it.
And you're right, and you don't have the resources. And going back to what you were saying and what Josh was saying a minute ago about risk assessments. Well, risk assessments have been few and far between, but even the risk assessments that have been done, they don't seem to look at other countermeasures that could be useful. If the whole goal is maintaining a COVID-safe workplace, then they're just not acknowledging the fact that what we're seeing now is COVID is just it's spreading, whether you've been vaccinated or not. And so you're getting these situations where stations will close, and the vaccine doesn't stop. If it doesn't stop the spread, we've even made suggestions. Well, why won't you look at a rapid antigen test as a means of determining whether firefighters are fit for duty, COVID-free, vaccinated or not? And they just won't. They won't entertain the idea. And
why not? What answer do they give to that? Because that's a very reasonable proposition, you would have thought.
Oh, well, they're too expensive, or you need a medical practitioner to come in and do it. And I'm thinking, well, you guys are the budget experts. How much is it costing you to pay firefighters double time to come in and take our jobs? Like you do the cost benefit analysis. I guarantee that if you can have a situation where you don't have to close a fire station, or you don't have to, be paying people in on overtime, or even put a community in a situation where they're not getting good fire protection, it's got to be a better option.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's good enough for the politicians. They can walk into Parliament with a rapid antigen test.
Yeah, that's correct.
Speaking of which, what did you make of the Prime Minister's statement at the head of the show saying that the jabs aren't mandatory, but it's up to businesses legally to decide what they would like to do? And it's an interesting use of the term, isn't it, business? Because you're not a business. Nurses aren't really a business. You're an essential service. So what do you make of the Prime Minister's abdication of any responsibility in this area?
Well, he's basically getting the state premiers to do what he's unable to do, and the state premiers are getting the businesses and the legal entities to do their work as well that they can't do. So they're just passing it down the road, but then the obligation will come back on the employer, legally, if something goes wrong due to these mandates and someone gets sick or dies because of something that they've done, especially in New South Wales. I know the recourse is going to be there, whether you're still with your employer or not down the road. If you get sick due to one of these things and it's proven to be how it happened, that the responsibility will be back on the employers. And I was reading some stuff in the pandemic legislation that was passed recently today, because I was trying to make some sense of something, and none of it was sensical. But in one of the sections was basically an indemnity of any ministers or chief health officers or any elected officials, or non-elected officials or their subordinates, from any wrongdoing should they make a decision that has an impact on someone's, health, employment, whatever it may be. So it's just disgusting how they can basically put this on employers and get away scot-free. But we all know that hopefully there's some actions being taken globally that might take care of that.
What's that indemnity in respect to with the ministers, or what's that indemnity in respect to? Like taking the jab or not taking the jab, or is there something
if they actually provide a direction and give some sort of order, and they're doing so based on the good information that they have at the time, and that turns out to be a incorrect decision or something that has some sort of repercussion to some other individual or entity or whatever it may be, that they are indemnified of any wrongdoing in that decision-making process.
So we only measure one metric now, don't we? It's COVID. We don't measure a metric of who might die as a result of suiciding, or if people die in a fire because there wasn't enough fire is there. The only metric we measure now is COVID.
Okay, just to interrupt, I've just got this subject is bigger than 1 hour, and I'm just bringing in Tony Millay now, who was with the CFA, and now Tony lost their house in the fire, in the bushfires, and now he's in the CFA, but now he can't actually be a part of it because he's not jabbed. So just bring him in to add. G'day, Tony.
G'day, Michael. How you going? How you going, guys?
Hi,
Hey,
Tony.
Tony.
Now
Nice
is
to
that
meet you.
correct? Is that correct? What I said? So you're in the CFA, or you were. You lost your house in the fires, and now you can't operate with the CFA because you're not.
That is correct. Yeah, we lost our house in 2015 in the Otway Forest fires down in Wye River and Separation Creek, and like there's 7 of us in the brigade at the time, and we turned out, and we're fighting those fires all week prior to the fire, impacting the townships, and
So were you fighting the fire? Were you fighting the fire somewhere else when it took your house?
Yes, because the origin of the fire was in Jamison, which is about 5 kilometres from here, heading towards Lawn direction. The fire got out of control up there, and we're fighting it for a week prior to the impact of the towns. And there was a lot of camaraderie there, and everybody, it was very emotional because what was going on. And anyway, I was up there in Jamison till 1 o'clock in the morning fighting the fires on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And the captain and I were up there, and he said, what do you think, mate? And I said, it's not looking real good for the next few days, mate. The winds are coming up and the heat's coming and all the rest of it. And I said, I think we're going to lose this, aren't we? And he goes, yeah, I think you're right. And we didn't expect it to go Christmas Day. We probably thought Boxing Day or a bit later. But no, it just impacted towns on Christmas Day. And it was very emotional for all the brigade members and everything on the day and days after. And, we had a really good tight bond, you might say. And that's all turned to absolute, I won't say the word, but anyway, that's, like I go down the street now and people in the brigade, several of them, will have their windows up in their cars but covering their faces because I'm not vaccinated.
Is it the reason I brought you on, Tony, as well? Is because we've been told by other CFA volunteers in the protests that a lot of the CFA brigades are really short-staffed now because of the mandates. Have you heard that?
Yes, they are. They are very short. I know a lot of members that are leaving, not from our brigade because they went and got double vaxxed and all the rest of it, but there are a lot of brigade members, older guys, leaving because their health isn't the best and they don't want to be compromised by the unknown vaccine, what it can do to them. So, yeah, we're losing a lot of experienced people in the CFA. I'm not a representative.
No. So basically though, we're heading into the fire season. We all know what Australia's like. We've got less CFA volunteers, and I take it the ones that have pulled out can't just come back in because there must be insurance or something. And so they might be calling on the city ones, but the city guys are already down in numbers.
That's right. They are. But what they do is they call in people from overseas, from America. They bring in crews from New Zealand.
They do that anyway when you're fully staffed and you still call in people. But now I just feel that it's like insanity. We're sitting. This is Australia, the place where
it is insanity.
It blows up, and we're removing. We're setting ourselves up for a horrific fire season. Yeah,
and also the amount of money that the CFA spends on training up the guys just to throw that away. Like I'm BA trained, and that costs a lot of money. Plus my outfit or my my BA protection.
What that is?
Sorry.
What is BA trained?
Breathing apparatus, BA firefighting. So you go into small structure fires.
Yeah.
And you got to wear breathing apparatus like the paid guys. And I've done all that training, and that costs a lot of money. And just to throw that away because I haven't been jabbed, I mean that's crazy.
Tony, I'm not sure. Isn't there a tension? Does that tension still exist from 2016 between the volunteers, the CFA, and the professional firefighting service?
No, they've amalgamated now, I believe, and no, they're getting along okay. that's okay. Like, they're sharing the stations and working together.
So it's
Josh,
been resolved. Yeah.
could you tell me, just as a guesstimate, how much have they spent on your training? You've been in it for 10 years, so I'd say they'd be constantly training you. Am I correct?
That's right. Correct.
Talking to Josh, they'd be constantly training you, Josh, to. So, as a community, we've put a considerable amount of investment into both you and Steve. I don't know where Steve's gone. A considerable amount of
kids.
taxpayers' money into the fact that you're there to save our lives. So
That's right.
And now,
So taxpayer, yeah, you're right, Michael. Taxpayer funds are used constantly in training, and I know that the state government down here made a bold promise to the community that an extra 350 full-time firefighters would be trained up over a course of a few years. That's obviously a lot of expense, and new facilities to train, and obviously if you're going to have on duty firefighters to be participating in training, there's a lot of juggling of resources and all that sort of thing to make that happen. But I mean, I've been in the I guess unique situation where I've actually worked for all three fire services in Victoria now. So the former MFB, the Metropolitan Fire Brigade, which looked after Metropolitan Melbourne, the Country Fire Authority, which is 100% volunteer, but used to have paid staff a little over 12 months ago. I was actually seconded to the CFA for a time and worked with volunteers very closely, actually fighting fires with volunteers as well. My uncle was a captain of a local brigade just down the road from me, actually, in regional Victoria. So I've got a connection to the volunteers as well. And I can tell you that the training that gets provided, that they have to put their hand up for, and Tony will attest to this, but the training that they need to go through, especially if they're going to go into a structure fire to do a primary search in the event of someone's actually at home at the time of a fire, that's serious training, and it does take time, and it takes commitment to get that certification to be able to do that job. And it's that's a frightening proposition for a first time going into a house fire. And I'll just add to the finish that Tony's experience, I had only been in a couple of years back in 2015, and these regional communities rely on very, very heavily on the volunteer presence to protect their communities. I'm in a volunteer protected area. And it's essential that these guys are able to turn out, and to have that pulled away from them when they're protecting their own communities is bloody awful. And it's at a cost to the community, and the government will never tell you that.
It's kind of difficult to find the positivity in it. I just keeps coming back to madness to me. But if they suddenly did turn around, because we've heard that there's cardiac nurses are being allowed back if they're unvaccinated, nursing home workers now, they're calling them back in because they're just so desperately short they can't look after the old people. If they did suddenly say, okay, you come back, would you guys go back, or have you been sort of too insulted?
It would definitely, for me, I'll just quickly, for me, it would, I love my job. But it has changed the dynamic for me now, and I don't have the same affinity for my my role or the same respect for some of the people in our organisation that I once used to.
Fair enough.
The relationships have been damaged.
Absolutely.
There's been a big division. There's been a big division between brigade members, and my feelings, would I go back? I don't know. I've still got friends in there, but they've sort of really distanced themselves from me over the last 12 months. And I feel like I'm on the outer now, and, where I was up on the higher level. Now I'm right down the bottom. Whether I'm on any level, I don't know. But and I don't get any feedback from the brigade members at all. They don't communicate with me. This township's probably, full-time people that live here in houses, probably about 23 properties in the town that's occupied by owners. We're one of them. But, all the others are seasonal workers. We've got a lot of building going on at the moment because of bushfires, rebuilds and everything. But, like when you drive down the road or you walk down the road, whatever you do, and they sort of turn their head, they don't want to look at you. I mean, that is devastating. So why would I really want to go back? It's just to put a division between friendships and camaraderie.
And the last thing you would need when you're tackling a huge emergency is division amongst the ranks. I mean, I know there's probably always a little bit, but that's the last thing you'd actually want. Surely you're one of the rare occupations where you literally need to be solidly together.
Yeah, and I'll probably a trust issue as well. Michael, there's a trust issue as well. Do you get thrown in front of the fire? Do they go, well, he's not vaccinated, just make him go in there, drag a 64 in or whatever, and just fight a big flame at 50 feet of height? I mean, where's the trust in it anymore?
And this is one again, Tony, you've been a volunteer, so all the work you've done fighting fires over the years is mainly volunteer work?
Yes, it's all volunteer work.
So it's all volunteer.
I've turned out to, we call them washouts, which are car accidents on the Great Ocean Road. Turned out to numerous of those. Cars going over the cliff. I was in the process of doing fire rescue training, which is now put on hold as well. So, that's using ropes to go over cliffs and retrieving, people, saving their lives. I'm also qualified first aider. So, that me not being in the brigade, that's a big loss to them because, to don BA gear and go into a burning house and pulling people out, like I think Josh said, right, that takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts. And I tell you what, when I was training for my BA, I put a black hood over my head, and you've got to go and retrieve mannequins, dummies. You can't see where you're going. They filled the room full of smoke. So, it was just crazy, but I managed to pass the course, and now I'm fully qualified BA firefighter. And, I can go in and rescue people. But now I can't do that anymore. And so when they're short on guys who are BA trained, they're going to find it very hard.
Yeah. Just to wrap up, Steve, what do you think's the answer? I mean, if you were the government minister, so just if you were, say suddenly they all went away and we took over, what's the answer from your perspective?
Wow. Look, I guess the first thing for me, and apologies for my internet dropping out. I think I was cyber attacked personally, but
we get a lot of that.
We've all cracked that joke, Steve.
Yeah, okay. Look, I think for me, the big issue here is if Australia's a country that's prided itself on freedom, for the freedom that we have, to choose to in respecting one another's decisions. And I think the alarmism that's driven all this to such an extent, if you pull back from that, I think you can safely mitigate the risks of what we're living through without having to force people to make these medical choices in order to keep their jobs. And I've done statistics and mathematics and psychology in a previous life before joining the fire brigade. And one thing that's really important is when you're assessing the best course of action, you actually have to have a choice between what you're doing, but then you have to try the alternative. We seem to be reluctant to even try the alternatives. You present the alternatives, and so many smarter people than me have tried to give information to the government. And if I was in the government, I'd be wanting to listen to more than just a couple of people provide me with the advice of something that is just got so much hanging on it. And there's a lot of people with a lot of good advice and a lot of good opinions here that aren't being listened to. So I think protecting people's freedoms for one, and then making some choices, yes, to protect people's health, but not at the risk of destroying their lives in the process. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to add anything, Josh, before we move on?
Michael, just to basically back up what I said at the start of the show, and thanks for having us on. But I believe a few of us have come together, and each little pocket of resistance is galvanizing with another across the country or across the world, wherever it may be. But these wonderful people who are joining together and opposing this stuff, I think collectively we all know that yes, there's a risk to people's health and safety with nurse shortages, emergency service shortages, even the education of our children with the teachers. You know, there's going to be a lot of teacher vacancies opening up. There's a bigger thing at play here, and we know that the premiers and the prime minister and the bureaucrats, they're all just sock puppets for the greater purpose of what they're trying to achieve, because they're in lockstep. The unions are all across the nation and across the world are in lockstep with them, and it's to achieve a larger goal of theirs, many of whom are speculating of what that might be. But I mean, the conspiracy theorists are running out of the theories because they're all coming true. So it's time.
But Josh, this is a really serious issue. And what point is there worry that this spills over into violence? Because people's their existence is being threatened. Their existence is being threatened. So at what point do people get so desperate that they start to do really irrational or crazy things? Or are those things even not irrational, crazy, but warranted in the circumstances?
A lot of people are going to be drawing the line at the children, and they've said that it's going to be available in the first week of January for 5 to 11s to get the product. And we've got some real issues here, and don't get between a Lion and a Cubs.
Yeah,
because shit will get really, really bad really quick. And I think people are starting to realise this. The rubber's hitting the road, and you can't be on the sidelines. You got to choose a side and grab as. I don't know
but
if
the government's not backing off, is it? The government's not backing off. They're bringing forward the boosters. The boosters are going from 4 months in early January to. They're
in panic mode. They're making decisions now that are irrational and seem crazier and crazier by the day, and that's because they're in panic mode. They know that people are waking up to this crap, and that the armies are galvanizing across Australia and across the world to resist this stuff. But the more and more people we get together, it's not going to take much. It's just going to take a small. Graham Hood says it best: 3.5% of the population to come together, and we can defeat this mess that we're in.
But Graham thinks we can do it with love and compassion. Do you believe that love and compassion will resolve this seemingly intractable issue?
It will be a component. It will be a component of it, but I think there's tangible action that needs to be made as well. But I've had some great interaction with Graham, and I agree with what he says.
He's streaming that. It's his stream. We're streaming to this show now, and we've actually Topher's working with us too. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the indies want to talk to more of you fireys, because with the fire season coming up, this is a crucial issue for all of Australia. And if the mainstream media and politicians want to talk about it, then we have to get it out there, because we have to have the community talking. We can't go into a fire season with a lack of firefighters. It's just.
Steve, did you want to say something quickly though? Or
just quickly, just to jump, just on the back of what Josh said. You asked, can you do it with love and compassion? I've got young kids, and if I feel compelled to share about the facts of the situation, not to tell a parent how to parent their child, but look, we're aware that Pfizer used a study of 2,000 children to test the vaccine. 2,000. That is a very, very small number. And if you think you can draw conclusions about the safety based on that number, they're the sorts of things that you tell parents out of love and compassion what they do with that information. But I think the greatest challenge we have is letting parents, particularly with the issue of kids, know, look, we're not trying to convince you of doing something, but are you aware of all the risks? Are you aware of the limitations of the study? Because you should know all the information. You should have it all at your disposal. Even the information you're not being told doesn't matter. Doesn't mean it's not true. Know all the information, and then you can make a decision. That's showing love and compassion. You know, I was a high school teacher before I was a fireman, so I had to look after other people's children to the best of my ability. And I can't not tell a parent about the risk of myocarditis. What they do with that after that is up to them. But if they don't realise that myocarditis is a serious risk for their kid, then you know, that's really, really sad. But
because they actually call it mild now. They go, oh, it's only a mild thing. I hear parents saying that. It's not a mild thing. It's literally the equivalent of a heart attack. It's the
myocarditis. Myocarditis.
If you're in
no
school
such
now,
thing. That's right, mate.
I know. But if you're in school now, Steve, they'd actually dismiss you. And the only teachers that can stay in school are the ones that will actually refuse to answer. We had teachers on, and they actually said science teachers are not allowed to answer questions from the children about corona, about anything, on the thing that they'll be dismissed if they do. So they're just not allowed to answer it. The kids are asking questions. It's the world's just going insane.
Can I ask a question of all the gentlemen here? Because I'll posit to you that this agenda is going as far as it has in many respects because of the emasculization of Australian culture. We've been emasculated. So we talk about things like love and compassion all the time and understanding and caring all the time. And we never talk about that's enough. I'm not going any further. That's the end. It's done. There's none of that anymore. Is that an issue?
It's a big issue. Like that's a big issue. And you know, you have to be able to stand. We've lost the ability to stand up for what we believe in and be respected for that. You've just got to follow on. You can't offend anyone. You can't say anything that's not censored by the tribe. The tribe's got to, you know, agree with everything that's been said. You know, it's
consensus. You've got to find consensus always.
That's right.
Soft middling consensus. Yeah.
It's all about virtue signaling, and you know, we just got to censor everything that doesn't fit the narrative. And that's
so. Steve, was that irony lost on you? There was a sign at the beginning of the clip that Michael played from your guys' protest or whatever, saying "Dad's body, Dad's choice." Was there any irony in that? Considering that was a great feminist phrase, of course, you know, my body, my choice. I don't think it was meant for the boys of the patriarchy to defend themselves for fighting fires.
No, well, look, we've got some, whether it's the Papa Bear or the Mama Bear standing up for what's right. We've got some great female firefighters amongst our ranks who equally are just as passionate about pushing back against this narrative as the guys are. But the men do need to stand up. We are called to protect. And it's you know, when you got colleagues who say, oh, I don't think this is right either, but what can we do? It's like, well, you're not going to do anything with that attitude, are you? We don't get anywhere. That's not how
It would be extraordinary if all the firefighters just said no. I mean, what could they do? You know, I know there's sort of the hints towards violence, but non-compliance is a great weapon. You just go, no, we're not doing it. You know, I noticed in the stores now everyone's got masks back on in Melbourne, how sad everyone looks. You know, they're looking over their masks. Everyone looks worn out and just what's going on, and just it's ridiculous. And you just think, at what point do you just go, no, enough's enough? Just pull the mask off and say, no, what are you going to do? Throw us all in jail? Enough.
Yeah.
Enough. That's it. You've had your 2 years. We didn't all die. We got to get on with our lives. We deal with cancer. We deal with fire. We deal with where our country literally burns to the ground, and we get up, and we pick ourselves up, and we build on. That's where we are. That's we're a resilient race. So enough with this cold. Yeah. Anyway, we have to wrap it up, boys.
Yeah. Speaking of fathering, I've got a child who wants to be fed. So.
Tony, did you want to have something to say? Sorry, we cut you off before. Did you want to say something?
I'd just like to wish all the boys good luck getting your job back and your life back on track. I wish you all the best and your family. I'm just a volunteer, so it doesn't really affect me. I miss out, that's all, but really that doesn't matter. But I wish you guys all the best, and hopefully it all works out for you.
Well, I personally would like to apologise on behalf of the community that's not actually going out and demanding that you're reinstated, because you're an incredible loss to our community. You're an
this show will be a green light to firemen. It'll be a green light to them. Because I'll think, now I can go and light a fire.
We're not doing that. And to think that there's going to be people out there losing their lives because firefighters who have literally done the job just to be our saviors can't get to them because there's not enough. It's Russian roulette madness. So yeah, so I wish you the best too, and keep fighting, and we'll fight with you. We see you at the marches, but yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
It's astounding.
Michael, can we just let the viewers know, or those who are listening in, if they would like to support what the Australian Firefighters Alliance is doing in any way, we have the website is australianfirefightersalliance.org.au,
and I'll put that in the link.
And on that website is a link to that video and the My Cause page, which any donations towards potential legal challenges that we might mount. As we all know, a win for one group is potentially a win for a lot more people. So we appreciate the support of our community, and we want to continue to support our community, and we appreciate their support as well. And thanks so much for having Josh and myself as representatives of the AFA, and Tony, a volunteer colleague there as well. Thanks for having us on the show.
My worry is you're trying to appeal to the institutions that just aren't listening anymore. People are trying to appeal to institutions that just aren't listening to the Australian people anymore. Yeah. They're servicing a different master, a global.
Well, we've got an issue too, Damien, about the judiciaries. A good portion of them are fighting for the enemy. So we've got some issues ahead of us. But that first Trojan horse through the gate, in terms of legal challenges, will be very important.
Well, the thing is, we have to fight for this. We have to fight for the emergency service because we want them to come for us. If we don't fight for the emergency services, who do we fight for? So I'm going to put the link to the website and the link to donate into.
It's not that. It's how we fight. It's how we fight. And by continuing to appeal to the institutions that no longer support us and have our backs, I think is almost like a fait accompli. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But every time we do this show, it's the same thing, and it doesn't seem to get us anywhere. It's like the union movement. Gone, don't care. Political process, gone, doesn't care. The judicial process, gone, doesn't care. We can keep saying it's great, but the reality is it's not winning us this battle. We're still stuck exactly where we were, 18 months ago. When I thought it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, not 2 jabs, and now third and fourth. It was 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
We definitely can't give up. It's always darkest before the dawn.
And
indeed it is.
And we've got to keep that hope. We've got to keep that hope up, because as fireys, we know that if you're trying to break down a door, you got to get a crack. Once your crack starts to appear, then you can, put some pressure on that crack, and cracks are starting to appear. And I think we've got to keep our hopes up, and we've got to keep looking for those cracks.
I love it. It's a great working man's metaphor. The crack through the door. It's fantastic.
I'm gonna end the show with the video I started. So anyone that's watching, the links are here, and go for and you can go there. And I'll also put them in the actual post as well. I wish you luck, guys. I'm honored.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. It's a great chat.
Hey, guys.
I wish we had better time with some answers, but thank you so much for coming on. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take
to
care.
you all.
See you guys. All the best.
Thanks, Topher.
We don't have a mandatory vaccination program. It's free and it's not mandatory.
Oh, shit.
Vaccines imposed by the government. Businesses can make their own choices under the law, but we're not about telling them what to do or telling Australians what to do.
But, you know, we live in a country where we're not going to go around demonising those who want to make their own choices. I think that's very important. That's not how our government sees it.